Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me in our third session of Grandstream Tech Talk. My name is Abdel Jabbar, and I am a support engineer with the Grandstream Networks here in Boston. For those of you who don't know, Grandstream Tech Talk is a webinar series in which we explore and demonstrate the top selected topics from the survey of Grandstream customers. And these are the 5 top topics from our recent poll that I will be covering today in this session. I will cover in detail all the major modules and features provided by the Grandstream UCM that will help you run your own call center in the most possible efficient way using the feature call queue in the UCM. Also, I will talk about the Grandstream CTI application, GS Affinity, and the Grandstream soft phone application GS Wave, and show you how to install and configure both of them. Then I will demonstrate how to tune ringtones for incoming calls and finish this presentation with a tour of the available Grandstream learning and training resources that can help you get more in-depth and practical knowledge of the Grandstream solutions. Before I get started, I would like to remind everyone that this webinar will be recorded and later published on the Grandstream YouTube channel. I also want to mention that during the presentation, you can submit your questions in the Q&A section, and we will have some time towards the end to answer them. In the meantime, if you guys can get me updated on the chat box, just to let me know that you guys receive audio well and that there are no issues with audio, please. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your feedback. All right, thank you guys. So one of the major functionalities built into the UCM is the lightweight call center feature designed to serve small to medium businesses. It has most of the common features that are required for call center implementation. The call queue feature uses what we call an ACD, or which stands for automatic call distributor, to dispatch calls to the agents by holding queued calls in a first in, first out order until an agent is available to take the call. And once the caller enters the call queue, by default, the UCM will play the music on hold set up for the call queue. And whether you use the built-in sound files for music on hold or you upload your own customized sound files, music on hold is worth using to increase customer retention and also reduce customer dissatisfaction. You can assign specific music on hold class to specific call queue, and you can also use hold messages to promote deals or to promote certain products. And actually, some studies have shown that music on hold that includes both the message and the music on hold recording significantly reduces the number of callers dropping off the line. So that's something to keep in mind when setting up the call queue. The UCM also supports the call queue position announcements, where the caller's position in the queue will be announced upon entering the queue. And this can help the callers to decide whether to wait more for an agent to take the call or simply leave a callback number and hang up or just call later. There's also an option that we added in probably 2 or 3 previous firmwares, which is the option to announce the hold time to the caller. So after 1 minute, the UCM will play to the caller how long it's going to take for the next agent to take the call. In terms of the ring strategies for incoming call distributions, the UCM automatic call distribution offers different strategies that can be set for each queue separately. And some of the strategies supported ring all, which will ring all agents in the queue simultaneously. And there's also the option for linear strategy, which will ring agents following a predefined order. We will explore more on these strategies during the live demo. The UCM also provides some of the interesting monitoring features that are usually used within a call center system by a supervisor or call queue chairman to monitor and assist agents during active calls. And I will explain monitoring and statistics with more details in one of the upcoming slides. For the virtual queue function built into the call queue feature, this feature allows callers to secure their place in a virtual queue without the need to wait in the queue. And the way it works is that the UCM will prompt the callers while waiting in the queue to leave their callback number so that the UCM will automatically place a call to the callback number when an agent is available. The virtual queue maintains, of course, the caller's place in the queue using the standard first in, first out. So the virtual queue can be configured to reduce the waiting time, the abandon rate, and customer dissatisfaction resulting from long waiting in the queue. The call queue or the call center feature built into the UCM also supports static agents and dynamic agents. Agents can be assigned to the call queue statically when you create the call queue, or you can provide the agents with a feature code that they need to dial into the UCM so that they can log in dynamically, and where they're done with the call queue, they can just simply dial another feature code to log off the call queue. And this will take us to the next slide, which explains how agents can be assigned to a call queue. So agents can be assigned to the call queue, as I mentioned, statically or dynamically. The static agents are selected manually and added to the designated call queue. And when an agent needs to take a break or get off the call queue, the agent can simply dial the agent pause feature, which I believe is star 83. Then when the agent is back, he or she can change the status to available by dialing the agent on pause, which is the feature code star 84. And one thing to keep in mind when adding static agents to the call queue is that there is a maximum number that you should not exceed for each queue, depending on the model of the UCM you have. And to break down the numbers for you, if you have the UCM 6202, the maximum number of static agents is 23 per queue. And for the UCM 6204, it supports up to 34 agents. And the UCM 6208, it supports a maximum of, I believe, 70 or 75. And the UCM 6510 can go up to 150 static agents. So for dynamic login, to provide more flexibility to agent assignment to the call queue, the UCM supports the option to log in and log out from the call queue using a combination of the call queue extension and the feature code that I'm going to show you during the live demo, how you can set it up and what kind of issues you're going to experience when you configure them. If you are using the GXPs 2100 or the GRPs 2600, there is an option that we call agent login. And this feature enables the static agents to easily log in and log out from their call queues using a simple button press on their phones to either log in or log out. This is something that you need to configure on the phone, and from their phones they can see the list of call queues that they are members in, and once they are in office they can choose to which call queues to log in. And for example, after the end of the day, they can just press a button again to log out, thus removing the pain to remember the dynamic login, logout code, as well as the extension numbers. And another thing to mention about this feature is that when you have it enabled on the UCM, dynamic agent login will be disabled automatically. So you can have either one of these. So you can either assign all the extensions or all the agents statically, then they can use the agent easy login to log in and log out of the call queue, or you can disable this option and assign static agents, and then they can use pause and unpause feature codes, and the rest of the other agents who want to join the call queue later, they can use the dynamic login. And when it comes to the monitoring tools available on the UCM, there is the switchboard utility that allows the call queue supervisor to monitor active calls on the call queue and operate and control them using the option buttons. The switchboard includes the following includes information about the following features like waiting calls with information regarding source caller ID, wait time, and position. Proceeding calls with information regarding the agent that took the call and the talk time for how long this call has been going on. The call queue supervisor can control these proceeding calls using the options such as call barging, to listen to the communication between both parties in the active call without being heard by either party. Or the supervisor can barge into the call and create a three-way conference. And there's also another option that we call the whisper coaching. Basically, it's the same. You just barge into the call, and you can only talk to the agent and hear both parties. And the whisper mode basically allows the supervisors or coaching personnel to assist agents during critical situations which require some intervention from the supervisor. In addition to the switchboard, the UCM provides call queue statistics for measuring call queue efficiency, and also you can use it to evaluate agent performance. And the call queue statistics provided by the UCM have some useful filtering options which can be used to get every detailed information about the performance of each queue separately or the full system. And using these filters, the supervisor can get insightful information such as call distribution by agent, by time unit, or by a call queue extension. It also gives the supervisor the ability to download the call queue statistics or configure the automatic download, which send call queue statistics to the configured email address at the specified frequency and time. Now let's go to the web interface of the UCM to explore and practice the concepts and feature that I just described. So I'm going to open a browser. Let's log into the UCM. So when you want to create a call queue, you go to the call queue feature, and as you see, I don't have any call queue created yet, so I'm going to go ahead and create one. The UCM will automatically assign extension 65 because that's the default. This is something that you can change just by going to PBX setting, general settings, I believe, and then you can change that range. And then you can assign it a name. If this is a call queue for sales reps, you can just give it a name, sales. So I'm going to skip those basic settings and go straight to agents. Agents, this is where you select the static agents that you would like to assign to the call queue. You can select as many as you want depending on the model. Again, there is a maximum that you have to take into consideration. Save and apply. So now you have the call queue created. So you want to go back to the call queue and make some changes and tune it so that it can fit the requirements of the client. So let's go through each feature and just explain what it does and how you can tweak it and when you're probably going to need to use that one. We talked earlier about the ring strategy. So the UCM supports five ringing strategies, I mean. And one of them I mentioned, the ring all, it's going to ring all the agents, the static agents at the same time. Linear. So basically when you choose linear, this is how it goes. The UCM is going to ring the first extension, then the second, then the third, then the fourth. So it's always going to use this order for each call that comes into the call queue. If you decide for some reason extension 1003 to be the first one to receive the call, you just check that one, and then you can use these arrows to change the position of that agent. Going back to strategy, the other options that we can explore is the least recent and the fewest call, which means the agent with the fewest call received. The random, the UCM is going to randomly call the numbers, and the round robin, similar to linear, but this is how it works. If this time it calls extension 1003, the next time is going to call 1000, then the time after that it's going to call extension 1001, and then 1002. It's like in a round robin fashion. I see a lot of people use either ring all or linear. Then music and hold. This is very important. You can use the default ones, the ones that come with the UCM, that's fine. But I always suggest that you build your own music on hold files and upload them to the UCM and create music on hold class. So you come to this option and you choose the one. And the best way to do it for the call queue is you create multiple sound files within the same music on hold class, and you can use a mix of music on hold recording and also a message where you promote or you welcome people when they call your call center. And this is something that you can add, I believe, under PBX settings, music on hold. I'm just going to show you this is quickly because this is not about music on hold. One thing is when you create the music on hold class, this is something that I would like to mention. There is this option that says random or alpha. For call queue center, I think you need to go with alpha because you want the sound files to be played in order. If you choose random, the UCM will choose the sound files. For example, let's go back here. If you choose random, the UCM is going to choose randomly from this selection. But if you choose alpha, when you create your own music on hold, the UCM will always start with the first, second, third, and so on. So that will make your music on hold consistent every time the users they call the call queue. There's also this option, the max queue length. The UCM is set to 0, which means there is no length. But if you want the users, you don't want people to stay in the call queue more than 5 minutes, you can set that one to, I think the value is in minutes. So you can probably set that one to 5 or 6, or it depends how you want it to be configured. The wrap-up time is when an agent takes a call and then finishes the call, the UCM is not going to call that agent for 10 seconds. Sometimes the agents, after they hang up the call, they need to update the ticket or they need to send an email. So this is a value that you can customize depending on the client's requirements. If they want 2 minutes, you just enter 120 seconds. If they don't need that one, you can enter a low value of 5 seconds. The retry time, suppose you have the call queue ring in all the extensions simultaneously. So the UCM is going to call these extensions for 30 seconds. The phone they're going to ring for 30 seconds, then pause for 5 seconds and try again for another 30 seconds. That's how it works. If you're doing it like linear and you want it to ring twice on each phone and then move to the next, you can adjust that one to 10 seconds or you can put 12 seconds. And then you can lower this value if you need to. In case you want to record all the call queue, the calls that go through the call queue, just make sure you check that one so that all the calls can get recorded and you can access those recordings from the same call queue configuration page. The UCM by default is configured with a 60 seconds max wait time. So if someone calls into the call queue and nobody picked up their calls in 60 seconds, the UCM is just going to hang up the call. This is the default setting. You definitely want to change that one. You can configure it, for example, to ring another extension, or you can send them to a voicemail where you can tell them, you can play a prompt to tell them, we're sorry, all the agents are unavailable right now. Please leave us a message and we'll call you back. So this is one of the options that you have. You can increase this value, of course. The other option that you can configure is the destination prompt. Usually, instead of configuring this one, I can probably set that one, for example, to 600, and I can configure this one with 500. So when I configure the call queue this way, I'm telling the UCM the max wait time should not exceed 10 minutes. But I can tell it also when it reaches 500 seconds, I want you to play, for example, this prompt. And this prompt, you can customize it the way you want, where you can tell the customers, all our agents are busy right now. Just leave us a voicemail and we can call you later. Or you can send the call to the voicemail extension or a ring group or voicemail group, or you can take them back to the IVR. So the customers, they have multiple options. So if I set that one, for example, to 30 seconds, this is what's going to happen. The UCM every 30 seconds is going to ask the caller, do you want to talk to an operator? Let's say I have that one go into extension 1003, which is the operator's extension. So if I have that one set to 30 seconds, every 30 seconds, the UCM is going to play the prompt, which is right here, to the customer, where it's going to ask him, if you want to talk to the call queue, to the operator, I'm sorry, press 1. So once they press 1, the UCM is going to route the call to the extension 1003. And this prompt will be played every 30 seconds. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you want to play it at the end, so you can give them an option before you hang up the call or before you forward their call to another extension, you can enter a high value like 500 seconds. So we're going to save and apply, but there are still some other options under advanced settings. So I'm going to talk about these quickly. In the presentation, I talked about the virtual queue. By default, this option is disabled. So when you enable this option, you have two options here. You have the timeout mode and DTMF mode. So when you have the timeout mode, what's going to happen, if let's say you configured that one with 40 seconds. Every 40 seconds, the UCM is going to play prompt telling the caller to press star if they want the UCM to call them back. If they want the UCM to call them back on a different number, it's going to ask them to press 0. And if they want to continue waiting, they need to press pound. So this is how the virtual queue works on the UCM. The first caller doesn't get this option. This is usually, this prompt gets played only when there's a second caller in the call queue. So when that second caller, for example, gets prompted with the option to leave the callback number and then they press star to call them, the UCM, once there is an available option, is going to call the user, the caller that left the callback number, and it's going to call the agent that is available to initiate the call. Some other options that you can use with the UCM is enable position announcement. So if I set that one to 60 seconds every minute, the UCM is going to tell the caller, you are second in call or you are third in call. Then there is this option, which is the hold time announcement, where it's going to tell the caller the hold time announcement for how much time they're still going to have to wait. Another option here that I would like to mention is the CTI application. And the CTI application, this is for the queue chairman. Suppose you have the supervisor extension is, let's choose another one, is 1008. So when you add this extension, when this extension logs into the UCM using its own extension and the user password associated with that extension, they will have full access to the call queue. They can manage the call queue, they can hang up calls, they can do all the things that the administrator can do on the call queue. So this extension will become the supervisor of the call queue. And this is the option that I talked about earlier, so I'm going to leave that one until the end. I'm going to come back to it. I'm just going to finish quickly those features. There's the report, hold time. This one actually, the UCM plays the hold time to the agent. So if I call the call queue and I've been waiting for 5 minutes, when the agent picks up the call, the UCM is going to tell the agent that this call has been waiting for 5 minutes, so that an agent can probably excuse to the caller for waiting too long, and that's a nice feature so that the agents, they know for how long that person been waiting in the call queue. In case you have one agent as a member of multiple call queues, let's say one for sales and one for marketing, and that person answers both calls from the two call queues, you can use this option that we call replace display name. So when their phone rings, it's going to ring their extension, it's going to show the original caller ID, and it's also going to show the name of the call queue, which is sales, as a caller ID on their phone. This way they would know that this call is actually coming through the sales call queue and not the marketing call queue. I talked earlier and I mentioned that there's an option where users, they can log in dynamically to the call queue. By default, the UCM does not support or does not apply password. If you want to apply password to that one, you can just configure a password, save and apply. So this is where you configure the dynamic agent. By default, this is empty on the UCM. And if you look at the bottom here, the document information suggests you use star for login and double star for logout. So when you follow that, what's going to happen on the phone, you need to add this pattern to the dial plan of the phone, because I believe the GXP phones, they don't support this pattern. If you don't want to go through that, you can just add any pattern that is easy to remember. For example, if they want to log into the call queue extension 6500, they can simply dial 6500-99 and they can log in to the call queue. It says this one already exists. So we can use a different code. So this is how the dynamic login works on the UCM. The other option that I mentioned earlier, which is the easy agent login, if you want to use this option, you must enable this feature on the UCM. So once you do that, save and apply, you need to go back to the phone. And this one, as I mentioned earlier, it works only with the GRP phones and the GXP 2100 phones. So if extension 1001 is a member of the, is an agent member of the call queue, what you need to do is go to account that is registered as a static member of the call queue, SIP settings, advanced features, and then you go back here and the special features. By default, this is set to standard. So you need to come here and change that one to UCM call center, then save and apply. So when you make that change, what's going to happen, let me go back here. The UCM will show a soft key that says UCM CC. And once you press that soft key, it's going to give you all the call queue extensions that you are a member of. So you can choose which one you want to log in or log out from. So let me go back to the web interface of the UCM. Yeah, let me jump to something else here. So advanced features. So I mentioned that the extension that you select under here will become the supervisor. Suppose you have 3 or 4 supervisors monitoring the call queue and you want to add more. If that's the case, you can just go ahead, go to user management, custom privilege, and create a custom privilege for the call queue. So let's look for the call queue here. It's right there. I'm going to call this one call queue supervisor. This is I'm creating a role that I'm going to assign to a user. Save and apply. Then I can add a user. For example, this is supervisor 1. And the privilege I would like to assign to them is call queue supervisor. Then I can assign a password that they can use to log in, the department email in case they forget the password, and then save and apply. So every time the supervisor, let me go back here, the call queue supervisor 1 connects, that person will connect as the supervisor and they will have full access to the call queue. So they can manage the call queue, they can monitor the call queue, they can also control the activity going on in the call queue by answering, barging into the calls, transferring calls. So basically all the features that the admin has access to from the web interface, that user will also have the same privilege. So that brings us to the second topic, which is GS Affinity. So the Grandstream Affinity is a simple to use and easy to use CTI application that basically allows users to interact with the Grandstream supported IP phones. In other words, it provides control interaction between the IP phone and the computer running the GS Affinity. For instance, you can use GS Affinity to initiate, control, and terminate calls on the IP phone from the GS Affinity interface on your computer. This CTI application works only with the models GXP 1700, GXP 2100, and the GRPs 2600. The GS Affinity also requires the UCM, otherwise it will not be able to interact with the IP phones. And there are many things that can be done from GS Affinity, such as complete control over calls, such as answer, hang up, and call on hold. Call feature management, such as DND. You can enable DND from the GS Affinity. You can enable call forward. You can also initiate transfer from the GS Affinity. There's also an incoming call notification. So on your computer, as shown in the image. So whenever there is an incoming call, the phone will ring and the notification will appear on the bottom right corner of your screen, and you can answer the call by simply clicking on the answer icon, and then you can take the call from the phone. You can also use initiate outbound calls. A nice feature is the contact management and synchronization with connected IP phones. So the phone book that is in the phone will sync automatically with the application. You can also use it with LDAP access. So you can check call history of the phone from your computer using the GS Affinity. And just to make it clear, GS Affinity is not a soft phone. In other words, you cannot use it as a standalone application. You will need to connect it to a compatible Grandstream IP phone in an environment where the UCM is deployed. So now let's see how to install the Grandstream GS Affinity, and also how to connect it to a Grandstream IP phone. So to download this application or to install it in your computer, you just go to the Grandstream website. Something is not right with my mouse. So I'm just going to use the browser. So I'm going to go to Grandstream website. Then we go to support, tools, and there it is, GS Affinity. So you have the user guide in case you like to have instructions on how to use it, how to install it. You can download the user guide. If you need the tool or the GS Affinity application, just click on it, install it, run it on your computer. And once you finish that process, you will have it available on your computer. So I'm just going to search for it. The name that it has is Grandstream Affinity. So I'm going to open that one. And then you have two options. If you have the UCM, you can simply enter the extension number of the phone, or you can go to advanced setting, and you have two options here. You can click on discover, then GS Affinity will discover all the phones that have GS Affinity enabled. And one thing right here before I start doing that, you need to go to your phone that you would like to connect to and go to network settings, affinity settings, and make sure you check that one and you set it to enable. By default, it is disabled. So you have to set it to enable, save and apply, then you need to reboot your phone. So once you go through that process, you just go to your GS Affinity and enter the IP address of the phone. So I have a phone here next to me. Then I'm going to click on connect. And this is what's going to happen. Once you click on connect, it's going to ask you to enter the PIN. The PIN will show up like in the screenshot. So you're going to have to go to the phone and get the PIN number and enter it in the GS Affinity and click OK. I think I have two of them running at the same time. Let's close this one. All right. So now the connection between my CTI application, the GS Affinity, and the phone is established, and you will get some notifications like the stuff I'm getting right now. So let's explore some of the options. You can actually, I mentioned that you can actually call from this interface just by entering the number, and you can initiate the call. You can hear the phone ringing, and you can hang up the call. You can access the contacts. And I have nothing uploaded to this phone. It's in default settings. So if you have a phone book uploaded to the phone, all the information will sync with the GS Affinity. This is just some information. Let's go back here, and this is where you configure some stuff like the show notification for incoming calls if someone is calling you. Let me try to call this extension quickly. So my GS wave is not. So once if you want to disable those notifications that show at the bottom corner of your screen, you just set that one to no or yes. Some other options that you can use is have access to all the call history, like answered call, dialed numbers, missed numbers, transferred numbers. So you have a lot of options that you can actually access from the CTI application. So the next thing is, give me 1 second here. I'm going to try to mirror my GS wave on this phone. Bear with me 1 second, please. Seems like it's not working. So the next topic is going to be GS Wave, which is the soft phone application with the Grandstream UCM. GS Wave, by the way, you can use it with third-party phones. I mean, the third-party IP PBXs. But if you want to take advantage of the QR code so that people can only scan the QR code and upload the settings to GS Wave, you definitely need to use it with the UCM because that's the appliance that generates the QR codes. So when you create users and you have two things here. We're talking about two things. If you have the UCM sitting behind NAT and you have users using GS Wave outside your network, one of the first things that you need to configure on the UCM is the SIP settings. And the SIP settings, you need to include the external host. So once you configure that one on the UCM, and then you go to the extension, and if I select, for example, extension 1007, I can simply check that one and click on email notification. And the extension, of course, needs to be configured with an email notification. So once I click that one, the UCM will send an email with QR codes that you can simply scan from your GS Wave. And as you can see right here, this is the QR code for the external IP, and this is the QR code for the internal IP. So that's very important, especially if you have users using GS Wave outside the network. If you don't have the NAT setting configured the external IP, the UCM will only generate this QR code for the internal IP address. It also sends the LDAP QR code in case you want to sync your LDAP contacts through GS Wave. It sends one for the local and one also for the external. And one more thing that I would like to mention about this is, let me go back here, because the UCM is going to send an email. So always make sure that your email is configured with HTML. Because if you set it to plain text, the UCM is not going to send the QR codes. Okay, so it's very important to set the template mode to HTML so that it's going to include those QR code images. And another thing about this is a security recommendation. When you have users connecting from outside your network, it is always better, and I always say this, always change the default port of the UCM from 5060 to a different port. You can use any port, either 5080, or as long as it's not 5060, you should be okay. So you change that port number under the general, and you change that one under external UDP port. You can use one without the other. But a lot of people, they get confused and they don't know which one to change. So it's always better to change both of them. So this way you know that the UCM actually uses port 5080 for SIP traffic. So when you have GS Wave and you scan the QR code, okay, the QR code will always include port 5060. So this is something probably that you need to add manually to GS Wave, and this is something that you need also to do on the Grandstream phones as well when you have them set up manually on the local network. So if the UCM is using port 5080, just go to the phone and add :5080. If you are using, or if you have the phones provisioned with zero config, you don't have to make that change because the UCM will simply take care of the port number for you, so you don't have to go to each phone and configure it manually. So these are some features regarding GS Wave. You can configure it with up to 6 accounts with 6-way audio conference. You can integrate it, as I mentioned, with the LDAP server. You can use it for call forward, call transfer, basically most of the options available on the desk phones or the IP phones. It supports auto provision using the XML config file and the QR code. The difference here is that QR code, it only carries a small configuration, so it's not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to send all the configuration using the QR code. If you want to configure the phones, like and include multiple settings, make sure you use an XML configuration files. The way GSWave XML configuration works is that it requests cfg.xml. It does not use the MAC address. So always, if you want to create an XML config file for the GSWave, just give it a name, cfg.xml. You can also use it for two-way video calls. A lot of people, they use it with the Grandstream door system, so they can get a video preview who is at the door before they initiate the command to unlock the door. You can also use it for virtual BLF keys, where you can monitor the status of up to 24 extension. In case security is very important to your calls, you can use SIP over TLS and SRTP to encrypt all the configuration. You can also use it for messaging between the GSWave and the IP phones, the Grandstream IP phones that support text message. You can run it on both iOS and Android. So I have 10 more minutes. I just want to cover the training resources available on by the Grandstream. So Grandstream Networks essentially offers many learning resources for its customers and installers to reinforce their understanding and knowledge about the Grandstream solutions. In this webinar, I will focus on two available resources, which is the Grandstream Academy and the Grandstream YouTube channel. Let's start with the Grandstream Academy, which is the right place for those seeking training and certification. Something happened here. Let me close that one. All right, sorry about that. So as I mentioned, GS Academy is the right place for those seeking to get training and certification. This is where you get access to all the online training and certification sessions taking place around the globe in multiple languages. And before I take you to the Grandstream Academy website, I just want to show and explain the 3 certification levels offered by Grandstream Academy. The first level is the Grandstream Certified Specialist, or GCS, which is intended for those who attend a basic certification training in a specific product category. Currently, there are 4 product categories for your certification path. The first one, I believe, is the UC solution, which includes the UCM and the IP phones. There's also the networking solution, which certifies your knowledge of the GWN solutions. And the third one is about the door system, and the fourth one is about the video conferencing solutions like IP Video Talk and GVC and all the phones that support video conferencing. You essentially think of the GCS as the foundation level of certification. Once you take the exam and pass it, there is an expiration period of 1 year. And the second level of certification is the GCP, or the Grandstream Certified Professional, which is designed for those who wish to advance their knowledge and skills in any product category. You must have GCS before planning to attend the GCP training. And this is especially for North America customers who are interested in becoming a customer certified, Grandstream certified professional. They will need to contact the distributor or and also register for an online training, or they can check the distributor website for an upcoming GCP training. So once the distributor secures enough participants for the in-person training, Grandstream then can schedule the training with one of our instructors. And GCP is an in-person training for North America, which means we don't do it online. One of the instructors have to be there to do the training. It's basically 7 to 8 hours, 1-day training. So once you get that certification, it's valid for 2 years. And the third level of certification is the GCE, which is the expert level that includes extensive training about troubleshooting, complex installations, and integration with third-party solutions. Now let's go to the Grandstream Academy website quickly. So if you want to have access to all the training taking place on the Grandstream Academy, you just go to academy.grandstream.com, and this is where you have access to all the information. So for the on-site training hosted by our distributor, so if you click on this one, for example, you're going to see that most of them are hosted by one of our partners, RSMI or Syscom. So if one of your distributors, or if you're interested in a GCP, you can always come back here and check the ones that are scheduled. For the GCS, or the online trainings, which means something that you can attend online, then after that take the exam without having to go on site or attend the in-person training, you can just look for the product category that you're interested in and also check the language. Some of them are in Spanish, some of them are in English, in different languages. So for example, if you're interested in the door entry solution and you want to pass the GCS, the certification for that product category, you can click on the orientation guide. That's going to explain to you how things are, what are the steps that you need to follow. For the training video, you can click on the video, then it's going to open on YouTube. Then you just play the video. It's like an hour and 10 minutes. Watch it and grasp all the information in it. Then when you're done, you can just sign up. The GS Academy will send you a link to take the exam together with a PIN number. That's the one that you're going to use to take the exam. And once you pass the exam, the UCM will send you a copy, digital copy of your certification to your email. So you can just copy that one and save it for the future. In case you are already certified and your certification expired, you can go to renewal so you can see the sessions that are taking place, so you can renew your certification. So these are all the dates and all the products, the product categories for each certification, so you can just sign up for one of them and take the exam. The second thing that I would like to talk about is the Grandstream YouTube channel, which includes a lot of information, a lot of videos, and a lot of things that you probably need to watch so you can learn about the Grandstream products. So this YouTube channel includes tutorials like the GS tutorials done by Nathan Sharp. It also includes marketing webinars. It also includes technical webinars. This is where you also have you can get access to the previous Grandstream Tech Talk sessions where you can play them and have access to them. So at the end of today's webinar, this session is being recorded. We will publish it on the Grandstream YouTube channel, and then you can have access to it. And if you feel that there is a topic that you think we should cover, just make sure you add it to the comment so we can take it into consideration for the next Grandstream Tech Talk. And I believe this is it for today's presentation. So I'm just going to go ahead and see if there are any questions that we need to answer for some of our users. So Blake is asking, can you customize how often the caller hears their place in a queue? I know a caller, it can be extremely annoying to hear that announcement too often. Yeah, definitely. So let's go back to the Grandstream website. There's one more topic that I want to cover after I answer these questions, which is how to customize your ringtones on the UCM and the Grandstream IP phones. So when you have those announcements, you basically, when you enable them, they're an announcement interval. So if 1 minute is too much and you don't want to play that position every minute and you want to make it 2 minutes, just make sure you customize the announcement interval for that feature. David is asking, is there a way to add the read-only user access to the queue chairman screen? I'm being asked for this feature. I mean, for the read only, if you log into the UCM, let me go back here. Suppose I am extension 1001. I'm not the chairman of the COCU. I'm just a user. If I log in with my extension as the username, which is 1001, then I use the user password to log in, I still have access to the call queue in which I am a static member. So if I'm a static member of all the call queues, once I log in, I will have access to all the call queue status, but I can only read. You can't make changes to it. You can't modify it. You can't monitor. You can't barge into the calls. You can simply monitor and look at the things without being able to make any changes. So probably that's one of the things you can probably suggest for your customer. David is asking again, when will GS Affinity be getting an update? I don't have any ATA about that, honestly, but I can check that information for you and see if there is actually any team working on that one. Edward is asking, does Grandstream have plans to create a software to manage all extensions for receptionists? Grandstream actually is working on a new software, but it's not there yet. Something that you can install on your computer, and it's going to allow you to use it as your provisioning platform. You can provision the phones from that platform, and you can also use it to monitor the status on all the phones. It's basically similar to GDMS that we have in the cloud, except that this one is you're going to have to run it locally. So this is something that we're working on actually. Michael is asking why there are GXV phones or GXV not supported by GS Affinity. This is a good question, Michael. This is like something probably only the dev team can answer that question, but I can get that information for you and send it to you via email. Michael has another question. How can it be done that if, for example, round robin is active, if the agents that did ring before after wrap up, that they don't get a missed call notification? If the call was taken afterward by, let's say, the third extension, then rang. I'm not sure I answered the question correctly, Michael, but this is the thing. Let me go back here. I believe you are talking about the ring strategy. So when you sit down into round robin, the UCM, the first time is going to start with 1000. The first time, the second time is going to start with 1001. The third time is going to start with 1002, regardless whether that extension answered the call or it did not answer. So it's always like a sequence who it should start with every time there is a call to the call queue. Marty is asking, does GS Wave work with all cellular carriers? It should work. I've seen some issues with the IPv6, and I believe that issue has been fixed, if I'm not mistaken. But I can verify that information for you. Give me one sec here. Submit. Yeah. So as I mentioned, GS Wave should work with any carrier. Some carriers, they use IPv6 and it's not compatible with some platforms, or it's not compatible with the UCM. It just creates some random issues. I believe they fixed that issue. I can check that information for you and get back to you, Marty. Frank is asking, is GS Affinity planned to work with? No. GS Affinity can only work with the GXP 1700 and GXP 2100 and GRP 2600. Todd is asking, can you limit the queue supervisor to just their recordings, or they have access to all recordings? The supervisor, basically, as I mentioned earlier, have access to all the administrative features related to the queue. So they're going to have access to all the call recordings of the call queue. If you want them to have access only to their recordings, that's something, probably a feature request that we can file to our dev team so they can work on it. Edward is asking, on the UCM 6510, how do I configure the UCM for when a call is internal, the caller ID shows the extension, and when the user calls out using the PRI, it shows that user's. I see what you mean. For that case, unfortunately, for the PRI, that's a different story. If it was SIP, you would use DoD, but for PRI, I don't see any workaround that. Leon is asking, can you use GS Affinity to integrate with CRM? Example, customer calls in and logs into the CRM and pulls up the customer. No, Leon, probably what you need to work with the CRM is the WebRTC, which is currently not fully implemented on the UCM. So for your question, GS Affinity is not going to be able to work with this third-party CRM. Todd is asking again, can you limit the queue supervisor to just, oh yeah, I think you asked that question already. David is asking, can Affinity allow you to monitor and dial out on all accounts on my phone? So, I mean, if that's the case, you would need to, every time you have to change it on the phone, because when you enable GS Affinity on the GXP phones, for example, it asks you which account you would like to use for GS Affinity. Edward is asking, will Grandstream be holding any training at IT Expo East February? Edward, as I mentioned, if you are interested in in-person training, make sure you check with your distributor. I mean, a lot of Grandstream distributors, they have some trainings scheduled. Just give them a call. If you have two distributors, you just give them a call both and see which one is holding a training, because I'm sure once they secure there's a minimum number of participants for the training, I'm pretty sure they can schedule a training for that event. So now let me go back to customizing rings on the UCM. So the first option that we have is for incoming calls on the inbound routes. And one of the options that you can use is the alert info. By default, alert info is set to none. In case you have multiple inbound routes and when users call, you want to know through which inbound routes the call came through, especially when you have one person answering calls of different businesses in the same office. There are two options. You can check the ring. You can choose, I mean, the ring tone that you would like to send to the phone. But be careful with those, because if you are using GRP or GXP phones, the ring 1 and ring 2 up to ring 10, they are going to ring the same. If you are using a GXV or Android phone, you can choose any of these, and each of them is going to ring differently. So for the GXP phones, you can use the Bellcore ringtones. Those basically, they're going to change the cadence of the ringtone. They don't provide you with a different ringtone, but they just change the cadence so that you can get a different tone when you hear it. The other option that you can use is you can use the custom. And for example, if you go to the inbound and then you configure the custom alert info, you can put any value in here. So let's say we're going to put, let's leave sales. So I'm going to put sales in here, save and apply. And which extension I'm using extension 1009. So I can choose extension 1009. Then I can go to that phone, which is extension 1009, go to accounts, call settings, scroll down, and then I can tell this phone, once you receive an alert info with sales, play the custom ringtone 3. So every time someone calls through that inbound route, the UCM is going to send the call to extension 1003, and in the SIP information, it's going to include the header with the alert info set to sales. The phone is going to check that alert info, and if it sees that there is a sales, it's going to match it with whatever rule. So if it sees that it already has a rule with sales, it's going to play custom ringtone 3. You can also upload your new ringtone file. If you have a WAV file, you can upload it to the GXP phones. Just make sure the file does not exceed 500 kilobytes. There's also the option where you can customize the default ringtones built into the UCM, like ringtone 1, ringtone 2, and ringtone 3. If you want to change those ringtones built into the phone, you need to go to the Grandstream website and use the ringtone generator. So you can find that tool under support, tools. If you have a Windows machine, you can click on this link. If you have a Linux machine, just click on that one. So I'm running a Windows machine, so I'm just going to click on that one. Then this is the tool that you need to run. It's simple. You just click on it. Make sure you choose 16 seconds. By default, it's going to give you ring 1. If you already have a ring 1, let me go back to the files that I have here and the TFTP. And you will see that I already have a binary file generated with ring 2. So if I want to change the ring 1, so if I want to change ring 2 on the phone, I just select ring 2, then I select the sound file. So I have that one here. I can select it, then it's going to generate a ringtone file for me. So this tool basically generates binary ringtone files. So if I go back to, let me go back here. If I go to desktop, you will see that it generated a ring2 binary file. And the way you upload it to the phone, you need to go to maintenance, upgrade, and provisioning. And you need to use the firmware server path. So for example, I'm running a TFTP server. I'm just going to go here. Of course, you need to check the IP address of your computer. So my IP is 22.149. So I'm going to enter 192.49, save and apply. And then I need to take this ring2 binary file and put it in the TFTP root. Save and apply. And then I need to make sure and run my TFTP server. Yes. And another thing that you need to pay attention to when using TFTP on your server is make sure the Windows Defender firewall is disabled. Just momentarily for the time until you finish your provision. So by default, it's turned on, so just make sure you turn it off, save and apply, and then go back to your phone. So now that we have TFTP configured, the IP address, the binary file is in the TFTP root. Just reboot the phone. Then the UCM during the reboot process, it's going to request ring 1, ring 2, and ring 3 from the firmware server path, and then it's going to override the default ringtones built into the phone. So I'm going to check one more time if you guys have any more questions, then we can wrap up this session. So David is asking, is there a way to filter which numbers are valid for callback? In other words, do we have an ability to prevent someone setting callback number to 911 or other prank numbers? Let me go back here. So that would require some, you need to tweak your outbound routes so you can prevent that stuff from happening. So for example, you can configure the virtual queue outbound prefix to 99, save and apply, and then go back to your outbound route, okay? And then create an outbound route for 99, and then you can make it 10 digits if you want to, or 11 digits. So you can use 99 with 10 digits and 99 with 11 digits. Then you strip the lead in 2. So if someone puts 911, the UCM is going to match it against this pattern. Then the call is not going to go through on the UCM. That's actually a good question. Probably I need to check with the dev team if there is something that runs in the background. But if you want to tweak your configuration to meet or to prevent that type of calls from being made, you can tweak the prefix and also the outbound route of your UCM. Michael is asking, can we limit the maximum inbound calls to maximum calls for queue or ring group else? Let's go back to the call queue. So these are the options that the call queue gives you. The maximum queue, how many callers can wait in the queue, and this does not count the calls that have already been established. So probably that should be feature requests that we can submit to our dev team so they can study it and see if it's something that they can implement and add to the call queue. So this is it for today's Tech Talk. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us in this session. As I mentioned, this session has been recorded. We will publish it in the Grandstream YouTube channel, so you can have access to it. You can watch it, and if you have any feedback or any questions, please make sure you submit them in the comments area. Thanks everyone again, and have a wonderful day.